share the tragic, awful, bad, terrible, heartbreaking news. Okay, I'm starting a podcast. My name is Lani, and this is the Foraged Finery Show, where we're going to dive into the world of jewelry, from history to culture to untold stories behind the jewelry that we wear today. I'm going to be diving into the past to make connections and kind of explore how jewelry has shaped and been shaped by society. And if that sounds like boo, yawn, boring, like next, I'm sorry. I don't know how to make it better. I promise it's not boring, okay? I think it's an important topic. It's an interesting topic. I'm going to try my hardest to make it super duper fun to learn about. But I don't know, just go into it ready to open your mind a little, I guess. Learn some new stuff. Because yeah, it's going to be fun. So yes, the first topic that we're getting into with this decolonizing jewelry history is kind of just a brief overview and explanation of why I want to get into it, because I did want to get into it, like, first and foremost, just really strong, because I want to spark conversations about jewelry and just fashion in general, not just jewelry. But I wanted to do it in a way that kind of sparks new conversation rather than repeating the same old or talking about what I do and don't like. But, like, why decolonize? Like, how did I come up with this? So, I grew up Hawaiian, and growing up Hawaiian, I've always been familiar with the beauty of my culture's jewelry, but other people don't seem to understand it or even know about it until they see that for themselves. And I feel like this is the case for so many different cultures in their jewelry. The beauty of jewelry from other countries, it's constantly overlooked by hype centered around European jewelry. And I think the most popular example will be Victorian jewelry, which I'm definitely about to get into. But people are so familiar with this Victorian and Edwardian jewelry, like all this royal jewelry, even when they don't wear that style themselves. But knowledge regarding, like, Indian jewelry or Cambodian jewelry or Polynesian jewelry, for example, it's overlooked and it's not sought out. And not to mention, when other cultures' jewelry, among other things, do become seen as beautiful, it's rarely recognized as theirs. And let me say that again. When other cultures' jewelry, among other things, do become seen as beautiful, it is not recognized as theirs. And one of the most recent examples I've seen, like, on TikTok lately has been with Indian and Desi women. They're noticing that bangles are becoming a trend in the US, but the people who are wearing them, they don't really know the history or the origins or, like, the cultural significance of bangles. And I think it's totally fine to, like, wear bangles, for example, without knowing all that stuff, like, as long as you're going about it in an appreciation way as opposed to, like, an appropriation way, obviously. But the difference is that Indian and Desi women, they do know the cultural significance, they do know the history, they do know the origin. And that's the difference, and that's what I mean when I talk about a figurative colonization of the jewelry industry. I'm referring to more of the conversations, the beauty standards, and the top fashion. It's constantly centered around not only Eurocentric standards of beauty, but Eurocentric styles of accessories. That's a tongue twister. But yeah, styles of accessories and jewelry as well. But when I talk about decolonizing, I'm not talking about they colonized the jewelry industry. Like, they made, white people made jewelry, the top jewelry, like, they dead ass colonized it. I don't know if I'm allowed to say ass on here, but they for real colonized it. The Victorian era, as I previously mentioned, it's one of the most popular, most expensive, most sought after styles of jewelry in history, yet it's also the period of time in which the country it originates from was stealing. They were stealing left and right at historic levels, meaning they still talk about it and it's still disputed today for the sake of beautiful jewelry. That was literally the whole point of it. They robbed Africa, they robbed India, they robbed everyone, and it's, like I said, still disputed to this day over some pretty jewelry. Okay, that's crazy. So because of the influence of genuine colonialism during this time of, like, art and fashion history, the Victorian era is kind of what I'm going to be focusing on for the sake of this episode. Yeah, because I think a lot of people, they get confused about when the Victorian era was, and it's exactly, to be very, very precise, it's from 1837 to 1901, and that's the reign of Queen Victoria. So from the moment she was enthroned to the moment she was out of throne, that is the Victorian era. And it's characterized by kind of just the expansion of the British Empire and the influence of Queen Victoria herself. So all of the kind of trends within like beauty and style and fashion, just everything was kind of centered around Queen Victoria and how she was feeling, what she was doing, what she was thinking, just stuff that was happening in her life. It was being applied to everybody else's life. And so a lot of the jewelry of the time focused on sentimental meaning, like how can this relate to Queen Victoria and how does it relate to her, you know? And this included like mourning jewelry, for example. That was a really popular style of jewelry during this time period, and it was because Queen Victoria, her Boothang died. Prince Albert, I believe was his name. He died, and so she went into a period of mourning, and so she was just wearing a bunch of mourning stuff, wearing a bunch of like, you know, dark clothes and intricate dark colored jewelry, and so that's what became popular. And this is because such a consumerist, if you can relate it to today, a very consumerist idea of life had been implemented into society. And so it was like, in order to honor the queen and just really honor their country and to be seen as a good citizen, they would give in and buy into this like mourning jewelry that was popular. It became popular. And this consumerist mindset, it was really pushed by the royals, and it was emphasized very often in order to kind of solidify their influence over like fashion trends and, you know, everything else that comes with being the most influential people in a growing, expanding empire. But anyways, some other trends during this time were hair jewelry, which is exactly what it sounds like. And lockets also became popular around this time, and they remain relatively popular to this day. But the jewelry that was the most influential to society, which ultimately shaped the Victorian era, were the royal jewels. So the royal family pretty much set the standard for style, not just Queen Victoria. She was the main girl, the it girl, if you will. But they were pretty important, I guess. And it was important that that consumerist mindset had been implemented into society so that they would want to recreate and adore what this royal family had, which was these jewels. So, you know, rather than focus that they're acquired in X way or this way or that way or stolen from Africa or India or whatever, they were just focusing on like, oh my gosh, I have to have this. This is the best. This is so great. Like Queen Victoria, you know. Yeah. So that's quite exactly what I mean when I say the jewelry industry has been colonized. Okay, the most sought after, the most influential, expensive diamond pieces, they were stolen from Africa. They were stolen from India. And it's kind of insane how big these diamonds are. Okay? And like how much history they've gone through to end up in some white people's jewelry. And I remember getting into this because I was on a car ride back home from Florida. So from Florida to Memphis, it was like 10 or 11 hours from here to there. So I had a lot of time to sit and think and research and yap. And we were talking about how much shit, I really don't know if I'm allowed to say that word, but how much stuff Britain has stolen. Like, that, just how much stuff they just have sitting in their museum where other countries are waiting. They are waiting. They want their shit back. It's not like they gave it to them. They are actively waiting for their shit. So I started getting into it. I was like, let me see what's like some of the most craziest stuff that, like, stolen artifacts in that museum. And when you Google that, you know, the British, they kind of have a very long track record of stealing stuff. So of course it pops up with just like kind of everything that they've stolen, like the most craziest stuff that they've stolen in general, that's like not even in the British Museum. Because that's all I was looking up. That's all I was trying to figure out. Anyways, so after going over like a few of the things that they stole, I'm reminded that in a separate place, like not the British Museum with all of those stolen artifacts, there's like other stolen artifacts, like big ones, like they're in the crown. I'm like, oh my god, how could I forget, you know? So then, you know, I gotta know. I have a brain, it's hungry for knowledge. I just have to know. I start doing my research. And when I say research, I mean the most scholarly, deep, scientific levels of research, okay? I'm using resources I have through my school, like access to the databases, access to like JSTOR, and I would have even been willing to go to like a library and read a paper book about it. But like only if I can't download a PDF of it somewhere from like Reddit or something. Anyways, that is not the point. The point is I was in the car, so I had to make do. I couldn't go read a book about it like I wanted to. But rest assured, because I definitely did my research, including references for those who don't understand carats, because I definitely talk about diamond weight and sizing in carats. And we didn't understand that when we were discussing it and researching it in the car. So one of my search histories from that car ride is like how big was Lil Uzi Vert's forehead diamond, and that was 11 carats. Okay, that's part of the research I did. Lil Uzi Vert's forehead diamond, that pink one, that was like a dermal in his head, 11 carats. So just remember that as I talk about these diamonds that were snatched up. And the two diamonds I'm talking about, the first one is the Koh-i-Noor diamond, and the second one is the Cullinan diamonds. Diamonds plural. You'll see why. But anyways, the Koh-i-Noor diamond was found in India a very, very long time ago. I don't know, I'm not a historian, but I would say like, let's say 7 centuries ago. Okay, it went through like several northern invasions. It was plucked from a Mughal emperor's throne. It traveled all across Asia, and then the British wanted it. So they wrote it into a post-war treaty. It was the Anglo-Sikh War, I believe, but they wrote it into the post-war treaty like, oh yeah, by the way, like, run your shit, you know what I mean? Like this, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word, but run those diamonds. They were like, this diamond now belongs to Queen Victoria now. So that's definitely paraphrasing, but that's what happened. Anyways, in its raw form, it weighed 793 carats, which if you remember, I said Lil Uzi Vert's big old pink diamond in his noggin was 11. So, over 70 times the size of Lil Uzi Vert's pink diamond dermal. I did the math. That was part of my super duper scientific research, okay? Anyways, while it was with the Mughal Empire, they cut it originally to 186 carats, which is still really, really big, but definitely not 793. And so that's when it was owned before the British got a hold of it. So that was like when it got plucked out of the throne, like I said before, it was 186 carats. So then once the British got a hold of it, they had it like on display. But they started getting hella complaints, talking about this shit ugly, we don't like it, you need to fix it, why would you even get this bum-ass diamond, you know what I mean? I really don't know if I'm allowed to say those words, but I'm too far gone at this point. Anyways, so they cut it again. They cut it to its current size at 105.6 carats because it wasn't shiny enough, and now it's in the crown of Queen Elizabeth. That's my little mini history lesson for that diamond. Now the next one, it's even bigger. It's actually the biggest diamond in the world to this day. It's absolutely just humongous. Okay, it was mined in South Africa. In its raw form, it was at 3,106 carats. Now remember, Lil Uzi Vert's diamond was only 11 carats. But anyways, it was cut into about 9 smaller, but still like the biggest in the world sized diamonds, including the Cullinan 1, or sometimes referred to as the Star of Africa, which is the largest cut diamond in the world at 530.4 carats, and that's in Big Boy's scepter, the sovereign scepter. And then the Cullinan 2, which is 317.4 carats, that's mounted in the imperial state crown, which I'm not British, but I do believe that's in Big Boy's crown, you know? Like the king, I believe, holds the scepter and wears. Either way, I know that the person who holds the scepter is the same person who wears that crown. That's the research I didn't do. I don't care to know about the royal family like that. I care to know what the hell they stole. Anyways, the point is that it was found in South Africa, and when it was time to like deposit it with the mine, which the British owned, the mine in South Africa that found it, it was so big and they deemed it like so valuable, they decided that to get it over to England, they were going to put it in a safe, put it behind the captain with guards, and like send it across real sketchy like. But it was a diversionary tactic. They were trying to attract those who would actually want to steal it, while they sent the diamond in a plain box via registered post, which I might need to stop and go do some research on what is registered post, because that was so long ago, like, y'all don't have UPS, so I'm gonna pause 1 second. What was registered post in the Victorian? Because, okay, like, I know that they were sending letters, like, we don't send letters anymore, we send emails. But like, obviously they were sending letters. I just want to know how they were doing it so efficiently between countries. Like, what does it went in the registered post even mean, as opposed to being guarded on a ship, you know? Because my whole search history, it's acting like I'm just stupid for even asking this. Now I'm embarrassed. Let's move on. I don't know. I'm kind of just assuming that they just got it there the normal way. They just put it on a boat, put it on a train, put it on a wagon, got it there. But I don't know. However she got it there, I'm sure it was super efficient for her, because she not invented, but kind of demanded all this postal stuff. Honestly, probably so that she could get her stolen goods in the mail real good. That's just my theory. But anyways, aside from Britain literally stealing African and Indian jewels to make it their own, and then establishing their own as the standard for all jewelry for centuries to come, they also permanently fucked up the ethicality of the jewelry industry. To this day, unethical labor, whether it be under poor pay or poor conditions, within the jewelry industry, it exists. It doesn't only exist, it's a huge problem. Okay, and it can be traced back to Britain colonizing these countries, discovering their resources, and claiming them as their own. For example, this can be seen for the country of Sierra Leone, as it was colonized. The British found diamonds in the 1930s, mined them in like a diamond rush, I guess, for profit, like legally for profit, until they got independence in the 1960s. So basically they had their run of being able to exploit these people and their land. And this kind of translates, not kind of, it absolutely 100% translates today into the various humanitarian crises that we're seeing at the expense of resources that we want. For example, countries such as Sudan has citizens being heavily exploited. They're being subjected to poor working conditions, poor living conditions, and it's all for the sake of pretty or nice things that we want. Because obviously jewelry isn't as stressed of like a prized possession, I would say, as it was back then. But this still applies to all of our modern prized possessions that we all have today. Okay, our phones, our tablets, our computers, just everything comes at a price. Money, time, and especially these resources that the people who are actively getting these resources, they're not getting to enjoy the fruits of their labor. And I think I would feel just absolutely wrong if I didn't emphasize how much that mindset that really, from the way I'm talking about it, centers around these pretty things that we want. It really translates into all of these kind of global conflicts that we're seeing today, where there's a resource in this country from these people that someone else wants, so they treat these people like shit. They treat these people absolutely terrible to take. Okay, it can be seen with the oil in the Middle East. It can be seen with all the minerals in Africa, the minerals in India. It can be seen everywhere, and it's really based on this consumerist mindset. It's killing people. And I know that sounds so like an oxymoron kind of coming from me. As I run my own business, I depend on this consumerist mindset to make a living, to pay my bills. I don't know, it's really conflicting, and it always has been. It's not just me overthinking. The jewelry industry has always been inherently controversial, inherently unethical in nature, and that's also part of why I do what I do. I want to do it in a way that's ethical, not only for the environment, as in like upcycled jewelry, but also for people, for the world. And that probably sounds really dramatic, like I'm just a little girl who makes jewelry in Memphis, Tennessee, you know what I mean? But that's also why I'm talking about it, because the more I talk about it and explained my mindset on it and why I do what I do, maybe you can think and rethink about your mindset and the way you consume what you consume. You know what I mean? Wow. I've just done a lot of yapping, a lot of info dumping, if you will. So I kind of just want to sum up what I've yapped about before I move on. So to sum it up, I want to discuss jewelry in a way that shines light on new things that have been overshadowed or even flat out stolen by Eurocentric styles of fashion, beauty, and jewelry. And I really want to talk about the rich cultural significance of jewelry that hasn't been stolen. And while I do want to continue to talk about jewelry with like problematic origins, and I absolutely will, I really do want to focus and emphasize styles and trends that have lovely origins and stories. So I want to explore like Cambodian jewelry. I want to explore indigenous jewelry. I really want to talk about Polynesian jewelry. And another one I really want to talk about is pagan jewelry. Like just the theft of everything pagan, honestly, not just the jewelry. But that is for another episode. I need to continue on with this topic, which I'm not exactly sure what to say this topic of this episode is. Maybe I'll just go ahead and say it's a generalization of what I mean. It's just me explaining what I mean, the background, and why I want to talk about it, what you can expect, why it's important, especially why it's important. Because I didn't want to just jump into it like, oh, this is forgotten, this has been forgotten. I want to get into why it's been forgotten and why it's important that you remember it right now. Anyways, another topic I wanted to be sure to hit before I ended the episode was the involvement of the trade industry. Because, I don't know, if you know history, you know shit was traded before it was bought. Before currency, you just bartered. And you know, when you read the history books, or when you think back to when we were reading the history books in school, they were always trading beads. They're always trading beads and silver and, you know, jewelry making stuff. Like, that was definitely a huge part of it, because it's important in every culture, not just to the white people that stole it. Anyways, getting off track. I wanted to talk about trade because obviously of its involvement with the history of jewelry, but also its involvement in, you know, the invention of currency. It's the basis of the invention of currency. It's the basis of the rise of the world economies. You know what I mean? Also, if you can hear a guitar in the background very faintly, I apologize. I live in a musical household, so just enjoy it. Anyways, so I wanted to talk about trade because they were also using trade to colonize through mercantilism, which the definition is an economic system based on the idea that a nation's wealth and power were best served by increasing exports and trade. And this is also where I get into kind of, quote, the New World's involvement in all of this, because as we all know, Britain did that too. But anyways, when you research mercantilism and how it applied here, they viewed the colonies as a source of raw materials like lumber, tobacco, and rice. And as we all know, that was not their only colonies. They had other places where they were getting other materials, like for jewelry. So anyways, story of trade. The colonies are granted monopolies for these products that they're providing for the British. They ship all these goods back and forth as exports. Britain imposes tax on the colonists to pay for these exports. And then there's also like the shipping, like the Navigation Act, where, you know, all the colonial exports have to be shipped to Britain on English ships, and they have to come through England. Literal just textbook colonialism. It's how they got all their goods, their tobacco, their cotton, their jewelry. So they weren't just trading all cutesy funsy, ooh, I like that, I'll give you this for it. Like, they were mean about it, you know? It was not a fun, nice, relaxing, peaceful time in history to trade beads like one would, you know, hope. I think I would have fun if we were all just trading beads. Ooh, I like that, you give me that. Ooh, you know? Which, as I previously mentioned before, all ultimately ties in to how the world runs today. Do y'all hear that? It's a cricket. It's outside my window. Oh my God. Why? Anyways, all the terrible, awful things, all the terrible, awful practices that are being practiced in the world today. And y'all are gonna have to excuse this little guest speaker we have chirping, literally chirping in the background, because there's nothing I can do about him. He's in nature. That's his home. I ain't gonna bother him. He's bothering me. But I guess I kind of ultimately wanted to yap about this because I wanted to emphasize the importance of jewelry historically and culturally. It's very important to other cultures to this day. It's important to us. Everyone you know has jewelry, but it's not just the fact that everybody likes it. It's the fact that it's established, I guess, systematically oppressive practices and ways of life and ways of thinking that still exist and affect people to this day. And that's why it's important to talk about. And that's why I'm going to talk about it. I talked about it from a very generalized perspective today. I mentioned a few examples like Sudan, Sierra Leone, South Africa, India. I've mentioned a few places, but I do want to be really more specific and give examples. Like, I want to talk about trade, but I want to talk about specifically like the Silk Road. I want to talk about specifically the triangular trade that was happening in the Atlantic. I want to talk about all of that and how it relates, why it's important. Now, I am going to end this episode a little early because of our little trippy guest speaker in the background. He's really making me angry, but not before I do a little Q&A section at the end. I think that's my plan. Q&As at the end, because I want to be able to interact with y'all and have y'all ask questions, which can be directed to, for now, my Instagram at _foraged finery. Foraged, not forged. Foraged as in collecting mushrooms and stuff like that. Foraged. And I only say that because when I started my business, I actually spelled my own logo wrong and I had to redo it. LOL. So anyways, our first question for this topic is, how can we as consumers be more mindful of just the origins and the significance and just everything, the ethicality of the jewelry that we're purchasing? So, not to toot my own horn, but get to know the maker, maybe invest in more handmade jewelry. And I'm really truly not saying that because I make handmade jewelry. I'm saying that because even for me, before I was the one making the jewelry, I just felt so much more comfortable knowing and being familiar with the person who's making this jewelry and knowing that they aren't going through what's been historically known to be terrible conditions to get jewelry made. And I'm glad that they can enjoy the fruits of their labors, which is not always the case when you buy big name jewelry. And it really sucks because of just the hype that's centered around all of these big names like Tiffany, Cartier, all of those big names. It does suck. They are nice pieces. I'm not sure the ethicality of those ones I just specifically mentioned. Maybe I'll go into that in a future episode. Good idea. But just look around. There are people who make absolutely stunning pieces, and not all of handmade jewelry has that handmade look. Like, people work with machines, people work with their craft to perfect it, to make sure it's perfect. Because if you think about it, these jewelry making methods, they've been around for so incredibly long, through ancient times, BCE, before Christ. So there's been plenty of time to perfect these crafts, to tweak what works and doesn't work, and just establish the right way to do them. And there are so many people who do that, and I'm not talking about just me. So basically, do your research, look around, step away from the big jewelry as hard as it can be, find alternatives that you like. You don't have to settle for less. In fact, I prefer these handmade jewelries, especially with these professionals that have truly worked to master their craft. Like, I'm completely self-taught, but people who have actually gone through like jewelry school, or they're like certified professionals, they can do exactly what you need, Oh, and also, I really need to mention, learn to evaluate this consumerist mindset that I've been yapping so belligerently about. And what made me think of that is just the difference between different diamond types and how they're treated. Like, natural diamonds versus lab-grown diamonds versus like those completely different stones that just look like diamonds. They can make those exact same looking diamonds, very beautiful diamonds. They are still real diamonds. They're just made in a lab. They will make those and they're beautiful. Jewelers can't tell the difference half of the time, but for some reason you can. But this consumerist mindset has emphasized the fact that if the diamond isn't real, it's nothing. It might as well be Dollar Tree jewelry. Meanwhile, the diamond industry is overrun by colonial influence. It's unethical. They don't treat people right. It's historically known to be bad. So that's definitely something to think about if you are big into jewelry, big into real diamonds, big into natural diamonds especially. Because personally, I think there's nothing wrong with a little lab-grown diamond. There's definitely a difference between lab-grown diamonds and like those other gemstones that just happen to look like diamonds. But I feel like literal grown in a lab, like it's made out of the same stuff. Get over it, you know? Anyways, moving on to the second question, which is going to be the final question for this, because like I said, I don't hear this cricket anymore, but I don't want to jinx myself. I'm tired of them. But the second question is, can you share a story or just a specific piece of jewelry from a non-European culture that has a particularly interesting history or cultural significance? I would love to, and this is going to kind of also set the tone for what I want to talk about in future episodes, how I want to talk more specific into these things. So, the first one I'm going to be talking about, which is the only one I'm going to be talking about right now, but just for the sake of the podcast, the first one I'm talking about is the meaning behind the Hawaiian fishhook. And in Hawaiian, that's referred to as a makau. And sometimes it's referred to as a Maui hook or just a Hawaiian hook. So it's not just stylish, it actually has cultural and spiritual significance, not just in Hawaii, but pretty much throughout Polynesia. Makau means fish hook in Hawaiian, and it's about the tale of a demigod Maui, which, if you're familiar with the Disney Moana, you'll know Maui, the rock. Yes, it's that one. The tale is that he used the magical fish hook to pull the Hawaiian Islands from the depths of the ocean and saved Hawaii. And then it also ties into the significance of the ocean to the culture. It just symbolizes a deep respect and reliance on the sea. And it's typically worn as a charm for safety, like safe travels. And traditionally, it was believed to hold mana, which means, kind of means power or aura. It's really translated into aura. But pretty much the makau or the fish hooks, they were passed down through generations, which gives it even more of a significance, which is why I personally think it's kind of crazy how they be selling them in the gift shops and people are like, ooh, yay, fish hook, and they just buy them, which again, I think it's fine, but they don't know, and we do, and that's the difference, you know? But anyways, the makau necklace is supposed to be worn with the hook facing in the direction of the wearer's heart for extra good luck, which is kind of a common theme with Hawaiian jewelry and accessories. For example, when you put in your pua, your flower, your little flower in your hair, because if you put it on the left side, that means you're like married or engaged or dating or whatever. It just means you're unavailable, you are taken. And if you put it on the right side, it means you are single, you're available, you're ready to mingle, you're looking for love. So that's also why everybody, if you follow Bretman Rock or like Bretman Rock, there was people on his TikTok, once he put the flower on the other side, they were like, oh my gosh, like, he's confirming a relationship. He literally was, like, fully intentionally meant to do that with the flower. So it's still a thing today. If you go to Hawaii, you gotta put it on the right side or the left side based on, you know, or you'll get ladies trying to mingle, or maybe your partner will get upset because you put it on the wrong side. Now you don't love her, you're not interested in love and affection and care, you know? But anyways, that's all I got for today. If you listened this far, thank you so much. I really hope you enjoyed it. This is my first episode. This is the first time I've ever tried recording a podcast. It really is a lot of yapping. I was gonna write a script, but I decided to just yap. So thank you for listening to my 30 plus minute yap session. I think I am going to plan on keeping them around 30 to 40 minutes long, just because I don't want to bore y'all with my voice for an hour, you know? I don't think I'm that entertaining. But our next topic is going to be about Asian jewelry, history of Asian jewelry, influence of Asian jewelry. So if you have any questions that you want me to answer, I think I'm going to pick 3 or 4 for the next one, because hopefully there won't be a cricket that comes in and pisses me off. DM me at _Foraged Finery. I already explained how to type that. But yeah, if you have any questions, type them there. I will love to hear from y'all. So thank you again for listening. This is the Foraged Finery Show. My name is Lani, and I'm done.